Thank you.
While the sign-in sheet's being around, we can start.
Sign-in sheet's going around. We're ready when you are, Mike.
So, Mike, first of all, and Janice, we're just, to start off, I want to mention about the MOU that we talked about yesterday.
Okay.
I think that the transit workers are a little different. We stated our position yesterday, and I don't think we're going to be jumping on board as fast. We understand your position. We are very adamant about the progression, and that we don't want to see that progression changed. We look at it as, we care about existing employees, but we also care about the employees that haven't even walked in the door yet. And we think that, they're our future of our organization and our transit system. And we cannot, in a rightful mind, leave them behind. And we feel that that progression has been in place for so many years that we don't think that, at this point, I guess we'll hash it out through this process of what will happen regarding the 3% across the board. But, if we were to agree the way that you guys presented it, we would be basically bargaining against ourselves and our progression that we've had in our existing labor contract for a long time. I mean, that three-year progression was set up even before I started, and I'm approaching my 25th year in April as a ECAT employee and as a member of this union. So I think that rightfully, we can't at this point. We would hope that you'd reconsider that and talk about that. But we're concerned because there are the positions of bus operator, there's the positions of utility cleaner and a bus cleaner that have progressions built into their structure, and we could not change that structure of starting out at 65% for a bus operator and changing that number and lowering that number because that 3% doesn't apply to them and to that starting wage. And then it definitely throws a mix into the bag because we have an existing bus cleaner who is at the lowest pay right now. And if he were to get the raise, that means if somebody was hired tomorrow, after we sign the agreement, they would be making less than that person. And now suddenly we've changed the entire structure of our progression. So we would hope that you would revisit that as well. So, but at this point, that's our position.
Okay.
That's the MOU.
Okay, I think we understand your position. Anybody have any questions about that?
Okay.
I think we understand.
So we were told yesterday you also had more proposals, or do you want to give those to us yet, or how do you want to proceed?
Well, we're happy to go over the ones that we gave to you yesterday, to start talking about those.
Okay, we're welcome to entertain a few of them and to talk about them. The team has reviewed them and looked at this, and I'm going to let some other people chime into this discussion because we all had our own little assignments to look at things, and as we look through this, we want to note right off the bat that what you call Union 7 union rights, you've gone ahead and what we see is you've, let me look here real quick. Let me go to a different article. We'll come back to that. So let's start with a couple that, right off the bat, that catch our attention. That, as far as we know, we've TA'd them. We've reached the TA. So, starting with, let me find one that will be the easiest to start to discuss. So let's talk about extra work or the assignment of work. Let's go to that, and let some people chime in and make sure that we understand. First, for the record.
Is that Article 31?
Let's start with 31. That would be a good one to start with. Let's start with 31. So 31,
Which is page
you've renamed
11.
it Assignment of Bus Run Schedule Work Assignments. For the record, which we will get back to you in a little bit here. Let me turn to this in my book. So, Mike, I can tell you that on March 7th, 2018, you and I initialed and signed off on this article. And then that was done regarding sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then on December 17th, 2018, I have the TA signed by Amy Lavoie and myself regarding an additional language that was added to it as well, that was worked on. And
That was not a formal bargaining session.
Excuse me?
I said that was not a formal bargaining session, to my memory.
You're saying, okay. so
December
let me-
17th,
December 17th.
that's correct.
Okay, well, that might be your position, but I will say that.
I think it's safe to say that we probably have a
Was
different
advertised?
opinion as to whether or not certain articles are still open, but regardless, this is our proposal. And we'll have another proposal of articles that I would agree were TA'd at one time, but we're also wanting to revisit those as well.
All right.
So I don't think that's really, an issue that we need to rehash as to whether or not something's open or not open. They're open, they're
Well,
all on the
That's your
table.
opinion, we're going to rehash it, we're going to bring it up. For the
Okay.
record. These meetings are recorded, and the public has the right to know what's happened over the past 22 months. They need to know. And they need to know exactly that I'm looking at documents right here that have Michael Matamore's name on them, and they have Michael Lowry's name as the union representative, Michael Matamore representing the county, and we have Amy Lavoie's name, who was the interim county administrator on these documents, and my name. Now, whether you say they weren't formal negotiations, I think they were advertised. Otherwise, Ms. Lavoie would not have met with us. They were publicly listed on your website. But I also think that it's not my obligation to tell you who should be at those meetings. But who showed up was Amy Lavoie, Eric Kleiner, the HR director, and I think Mike Crittenden, who was the transit director at the time. And this is an issue of.
That was not a formal bargaining session.
So, it sure felt like bargaining at the table. I've been doing this for 20-some years, I can tell you, I know when we're bargaining, when we're not bargaining. So,
The chief negotiators for each team were not present. I wasn't even notified of those meetings that were held in December. And to my knowledge, they were not advertised, but I would have to confirm that because I'm not certain.
well, that's strange, because I saw you at one point standing at the door.
I happened to be walking down the hall because
So-
that's where my office is located, and I happened to see everyone walking into the fourth floor training room and asked Mr. Crittenden what you were doing when I saw you come out of the elevator.
Sure.
At that time, Mr. Howard was your chief negotiator, and I believe Mr. Matamore was our chief negotiator, and neither was present. I wasn't even aware of those sessions, and I was told later that I believe there were 5 or 6 meetings.
Well, 5 or 6. I'd have to look at the dates. I think there were 3 different dates, weren't there? For 3 different days?
Well, I was not aware of any of those meetings. To my knowledge, they were not advertised, and they were not formal bargaining sessions.
Okay, so that's your position. I will tell you that our position is, our entire team knew about the bargaining, and Mr. Howard was not there because by choice, he chose, he was on vacation at the time, and now, as far as chief negotiator, I'm actually the president of business agent of the local union, just like I'm sitting here today. So when I appoint him as the chief negotiator of the union, he takes charge when he's present. Otherwise, I'm in charge of negotiations when I don't have anyone else. I could turn it over to someone else. I could say,
So these are
Lalonda.
not formal?
So this is not
You don't
formal
have
today?
our chief?
That's a good point.
No, I was under the impression that you were acting as chief negotiator for these rounds of negotiations because you previously designated yourself as the chief negotiator, if you recall, I believe in the spring, when Ms. Lavoy then, I think in the March session that we had, which was a formal bargaining session, I believe you and Amy Lavoy served as the chief negotiators.
In March 8th.
March of this year, I believe so. I'm just going off memory, but that's what I recall.
Well, March 8th, I can tell you that Curtis Howard was in the room that
Okay.
day.
Well,
I remember those
I know
negotiations.
that Amy, at
And
one
you were
point
there.
became, yes, I was. I know that Amy at one point became acting as the chief for our bargaining team. But if Mr. Howard needs to be here, then you should tell us that, because as you know, I've been instructed to only communicate through the chief negotiator of your bargaining team. So I want that to be clear.
So,
Are you acting as the chief negotiator then?
today I'm chief negotiator for
Okay.
this bargaining unit. Yes, today.
Okay.
But we don't let you determine who the chief negotiator is.
I'm not
for our
trying
team.
to
I
determine
understand.
it. I'm
But,
asking who.
so let's go back to, Mike, this is important. Now, we need to understand something here. So there was on December 17th, we met formally with Amy Lavoy, who was the interim county administrator. You telling me she didn't communicate to the team that she was having negotiations? Is that what you're saying? Michael Crittenden didn't communicate to anyone?
I'm
Eric
telling
Kleiner
you, I
didn't?
wasn't aware of the meetings, that I happened to walk down the hallway and see people walking into a room. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. For the record,
Verify whether or not
I got her
it's
name.
advertised, because the advertisement,
Sure.
Right.
But
What's the-
regardless, if,
Was it advertised?
regardless, I don't think that that necessarily settles the issue and the point that you're trying to make. All of the entire contract is on the table regardless of whether it was, at one point in time, the parties may have tentatively agreed to certain terms. The contract is on the table now.
so with that being said, our position regarding that article is that we have TAs signed. And you'll be receiving back from us here soon, after we talk. We're willing to talk about certain articles, because, let me say this to you. Some articles we believe, from a email received from you, let me hand this across the table so you got a copy of it. Here you go, Mike. So this is an email that was sent, and I understand that you're going to say the county commissioners said that the agreement was not ratified. That they took the position that they did not approve on whatever date that was, July something.
18th.
July 18th.
And they directed the county administrator to resume negotiations with the
To
union.
resume negotiations.
That's correct.
By the way, we watched the video yesterday.
I did too.
And yesterday, someone made a statement about they were directed to address some articles at that meeting. Well, I didn't know that.
No, that's not what we stated. But actually, I thought it was interesting, I'm sure you heard this, but you stated, and this is a quote, "If you vote this contract down, under statute 447, it's a package deal, and we would be back at the table, potentially starting over."
That is correct. Potentially, that is, you and I both know, and Mike
Mm-hmm. Yes.
knows, that potentially could happen.
Yes,
And that's why we're sitting here today.
Yes.
But let me say this to you. It's also an idea here that we worked 22 months on this labor agreement. And so I see you, the real intent is you're taking this labor agreement and taking all the work we've done between the two parties, which was probably 47, 48 articles out of 53. And now you're trying to say we want to start revisiting those again. And I think that's.
that's our team's position, and that's what we believe is in the best interest of the county and the employees.
Right.
It was.
Well, you say it's in the best interest of employees.
How can it be the best interest of the employees if the paperwork that we're receiving from y'all is going backwards instead of staying standard to what we're not asking for anything over and above what we had. We're staying factual. What you have handed us here is in fact going backwards from what you P&A'd there.
But the county's done exactly the same thing. We had, discussing Article 31, TA 3718, reopened by the union 12/17/18. So the union has done exactly what you're accusing us of doing.
By offering
But you're
subsequent
opening up the whole
MOUs.
contract, is what you're implying.
But we're suggesting changes to what was negotiated before, but that document, that contract in its prior form, or even the TAs, was not ratified. So to simply go back, and by not ratifying it, legally, we have to sit back down and look at the contract again. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to get to a contract that would be ratified by
Mike,
both
I
parties.
understand that to a very good standpoint.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be easier, instead of coming back with a whole new setup and a whole new deal, is work off the TNAs that we are the articles that we already improved, to see what we could do with those?
And address the issues that you had, that you were really concerned about
Yeah.
back
I mean,
in,
why start over with a whole
April
new
and May.
plan when
Well-
there's a plan in play?
And I think part of the reason to start over is because this is a contract that was inherited by the county from a contract between a private company who was contracted by the county to manage the transportation system. And what I've been instructed to do is to bring back a contract that looks like a contract the county would have provided.
Well, this contract has been working for the county for eons.
No, the contract was with with a private
I
management
understand that,
company,
but we were
most
still
recently with First
affiliated
Transit.
with the county, and we were still driving the same county roads. We were still called Escambia County Area Transit, and it was working for 75 years. So why take something and throw it out of the hazmat area and start all over again? Why not start off with what we already have in play?
Well, let me ask you this, would you like to be driving a bus that's 75 years old, or would you prefer to have a bus that's fairly new? Probably a newer bus, because you know what, that's.
so I'm not sure what that means, Ed. Let me, because what you just asked about something that, you're talking about a bus that's ordered, that's gotten from grants, federal grants that pay for buses. You know, that's not coming out of the operational money that's come under the 4-cent gas tax. So I wanted to make a point. We looked at the calendar from December, and we got a picture here. It shows the PBA having union negotiations, and then right below it has Amalgamated Transit Union 1395 bargaining session dated Friday, December 14th, and Monday, December 17th. So to say it wasn't bargaining, I feel that's, not right. But let's get back to this for a second. So I need some clarification on a couple things. Talking about Article 31, just to start off. Some clarification. You heard us say that we're looking at TAs here, okay? We're not sure why you're trying to reopen this. So I'd like to know if you could have someone, I'm assuming because this, through the entire negotiations, you've referenced it over to the transit director, Michael Cretin was doing it. I'm assuming you're going to have Tanya tell us why are we even looking at some of these actions that are being done in this right here? What is the purpose, and could you describe what's going to happen under this article?
This particular article?
Yes, ma'am.
What has been,
Just put it in your bio.
as with the rest of the items that were presented to y'all yesterday, from the team's perspective, looking, since it's now considered an open item, of previously what we have been doing, having a more efficient system, and operating the system as far as runs, as far as scheduling. Just as I've mentioned to you, I've mentioned to everyone else, I'm ultimately accountable for the entire system of VCAT, to make sure, and I have been instructed to make sure that we're running efficiently. And there are opportunities that are identified within not only this particular run, or this particular article, and some of the other articles that are indicative of us not being the most efficient that we possibly can as a transit system. So although you may see this one particular item, there's other factors that are in play as well as this particular item. One of the things that is not reflective in this actual contract, from a management standpoint, we are working on coming up with some comprehensive standard operating procedures, which would be consistent and equitable to employees, as well as making sure that management has, it's nothing to do with this particular contract, but far as on the managerial side, the processes and procedures on implementing to make sure that we're running an efficient system.
So could you talk about sections 1 and 2, because they're completely struck through? Can you explain what the thought process is there? Because, section 1 is, if I read it out loud, it will say regularly scheduled weekday jobs, Saturday and Sunday jobs, regular jobs, extra board, and days off shall be chosen based on full-time operator seniority standing. 10-hour assignments will include assigned days off, but will also be chosen based on seniority standing. You struck through that entire section. What is the thought process there? Just looking at it, it sends a message to us. So what is your thought process? What is the reasoning of striking through that entire section? What's going to happen?
What do you mean, what's going to happen?
Because that article says that basically jobs are based on seniority, correct? And it
Well,
says
that-
that we have 10-hour shifts as well. We all
That
know
may
we
be
have.
that's not what I'm reading from them.
Well, go ahead.
It's more
What
a
is,
definitive.
I need to understand what your thought process of why that would be struck through.
I mean, it's more of a definition. I don't see it more so of instructing as far as the 10-hour runs. It's not saying that those particular runs are being taken away either.
Well, up under section 1, the definition, where it states 10-hour run assignments will be assigned, days off will not be subject to a choose-up. How is that? That's
Under your
part of-
proposal.
Yeah. Because all that's already,
No, I think that's intended to mean that the days off are not subject to the choose-up, because those are fixed on a 10-hour run, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
but
So the intent's not changed, and in fact, it states in the general choose-up definition
Yeah.
that they are selected in seniority order.
Yeah,
So
it's-
it was
it's-
actually duplicative to reiterate
so
that.
pretty much it'll be the same, but you just,
It's just,
to us, it don't make sense
Okay.
from our point of view. Because when we do the choose-up, everything is there, and it's still based off of you choosing the seniority. But when you strike through it, it's like, and then it's down here, it just don't make sense.
I think the intent is the same.
Yes.
I'm not sure we would agree with that. Words matter. Words matter when you type a
Well,
legal agreement.
I
I
mean,
see you
it
shaking your
says,
head.
it says all
Obviously, attorneys
operators
feel
will
that
have
way.
the opportunity in seniority order,
Mm-hmm.
right, to make selections in seniority order. So I don't know how that's different than when it says up top, shall be based on full-time operators' seniority standing.
So go to
So
section
let me-
2.
Let me, hold on, wait a
Okay,
minute.
go
wait a
ahead.
minute. So with that being said, it's 8-hour jobs that's set with the weekends already off or days built in, but you didn't put that on there. So that's kind of, misleading.
This is something
It
we're very
kinda-
familiar with, just so
Yeah,
you know.
It really contradicts itself because you got 8-hour jobs, they got Saturdays, days off already built into it. Not even just the weekends. It might be, it's off on a Wednesday or however, vice versa, but it's not saying that, so that'll throw up a flag. For someone who does the choose up. Then you put down, you strike through section 2 that, we don't see it. It's been so many times that management have done it, and we had to go back and say, hey, no, you're supposed to add some more, and, this ain't right, and, because we work together. But here, it's like, we don't even get to see it until it's just finna be posted and,
I would even argue that we have people on our side that are better at doing the scheduling than management does, because we catch all the mistakes.
yeah.
Okay, so I think, under section 2, it does, look under section 2,
It says
A lot.
that the president or business agent shall have the privilege of examining. And it's just kind of moved down to section 2 where it says,
Yeah.
upon request, a designated union official will be permitted to review the choose-up list,
Well-
seniority list.
Well, upon request, right? But,
Well, the other one just says that shall have the
So-
privilege.
and so Mike,
Yeah.
let's just, and then if you go above it, the paragraph before, you guys say, you say, all choose-ups will be conducted by the operations manager or designee. So that tells me that Greg Thomas is going to be the one now conducting the choose-ups. He's the same individual that we have many issues with on a regular basis of how he manipulates extra work and how he gives out work to workers. you see grievances because of his actions. I'm not trying to beat him up. I'm just telling you factual how
Yes.
the workforce feels about this. He manipulates it to, if he has a special friend, he's gonna hook that friend up to give them the work over the workforce,
supposed to.
over the person that's actually supposed to get it.
Or over the person that signed up on their day off to get the work.
I'm sorry, I thought under the current practice, the union ran the choose-ups.
Correct.
Correct.
And that's why we're involved. We're involved because I'm gonna give you one example. We start a bid, we get a copy of the bid prior to the bid, it's turned over, I'm gonna use her because we have other folks that also are involved. She'll review the entire bid, and then she'll go back and meet with him and say, well, you didn't do this right, this was incorrect. You're,
Or we
you know,
need to add.
we need to
two
add this
more-
job,
yeah.
you haven't covered all the work yet.
Or the times are wrong on this schedule.
Correct. And actually, there's been many times where we walked in and said, you know, you only got a job here that's listed for 37 hours. We found another 3 hours so you can make it a full 40-hour job. We help them fix this on a regular basis. We conduct the bid because as far as we're concerned, when we conduct it, we're gonna make sure it's equally and fairly done to everybody. Because we don't want any little hookups here. But I'm gonna tell you, we're concerned as soon as we look down and we see that the manager's gonna conduct the bid. And by the way, in the industry, it's very common that the union conducts the bid. You can go out throughout the state of Florida, and I can go into the locations and find where the union conducts the bid, and processes it through. But that's concerning to us. That right off the bat, that tells me, oh boy, where are we going with this?
But I want to clarify that you're saying this is about a particular individual
And not
more so than it
entire-
is about the,
The position.
The process.
No, that's not it, none whatsoever. What we're saying is that with union working with the management, you come up with a better scheduling and a better time run and a better routing system for the choose-up. One individual trying to make up the choose-up is a nightmare.
But
And,
Jim,
and,
that's the
and,
same-
and most importantly, you avoid grievances.
That hasn't changed, though.
So, can I make one more statement, which is this? I've been here a long time, Ms. Gilly. I've seen it when management used to do the bids. I've been there. I've been here a while, and I've watched that happen. And ultimately, we got to this point where the union's doing the bid, because management said, you know what, we're tired of the grievances, we're tired of this situation, if we're gonna make a mistake, we're gonna let you make the mistake. They put it back off on us. So we're okay with that, because we make a mistake, we're gonna go back and we're gonna fix it with our membership. But we're avoiding grievances. So you also crossed out that we're gonna have 3 times per year, shall be no less than 3 times per year for a general choose-up. What does that mean? What does that mean when you say that? So you're saying we're only gonna have, then you said general choose-up bids shall go into effect at the beginning of the first day of the pay period in May, August, December. I'm a little confused why you crossed it out above.
Under the definition of a general choose-up, it's bidding once every 4 months.
Okay,
That's 3 times a year.
okay, I just tried to find out why you
Because
crossed
it's
it out in section
duplicative.
2. I just didn't know why you.
Duplicative.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right,
Alright.
so just to catch us up, it's, the previous language drove bids by seniority, and the language we proposed does the same. And the question of how, whether there's going to be an opportunity for the union to review the list and the seniority list is still there. It's worded differently, but operationally, it is about the same. And then the last question was, how frequent is the bidding? And we struck 3 times a year, but we have language in there that we think is clear, which is every 4 months. So I think in substance, we're on the same page. I hear that of all of this, where we still really are apart is who manages the bid?
Well, that's one area. Let's go a little farther into section 2.
Okay.
Let's go I'm gonna bounce around here, but let's go to the very end of section 2 where you struck out A and B. So, help me out. So I want to make sure I'm clear. Are you still saying that if someone's out 30 days, when they return, when will they be back on, based on their seniority, back on the bid? Back on their bidded run that they bidded on? When would they be back on?
Once they return and have been
Once
cleared
they
by
return.
safety? And cleared by safety?
Yeah, they're back, ready to drive. What, just tell me what it says.
The likelihood is that they're gonna go to the bottom of the list
Okay, for how long?
until the next choose-up,
To the next choose-up.
yes,
Okay. And that's, you know that's not the practice now, right?
yeah.
Okay. So we have a problem with that too, Mike.
Okay.
Because right off the bat, I'm just going to tell you, you know, the current practice is, somebody help me out. What's the
Yeah,
current practice?
Pretty much, they go out, and it is over 30 days. We do have a bump down. Then when they come back, we wait until the, next full pay, first pay, and we have a special choose-up because their seniority is affected.
So, for instance, if one of our senior drivers has some kind of illness and he's out 30 days, 31 days, he returns to work, what she's implying is, if that's in the beginning of the choose-up, he could be sitting out there for another 3 months, working Saturdays, working till late at night, even though he's done his time after 30, 40 years service. And what we created is language that was negotiated and put in here back in last year, that simply says that there is a process, they come back
And they will go to the bottom of the board
They-
until,
Pay period.
until we can do a bump down to allow them to exercise their seniority to get back to their shift.
what's wrong with that?
I guess, I feel like I'm reliving this back from 2018. I'm reliving this conversation again, so it's like we're reliving it. Maybe the face changed of the transit director, but it's still, you know, we're talking about this again. So, which becomes a little frustrating to talk about this again. So that's concerning to us, because we believe in seniority. You know, we believe in a lot, while we understand that someone comes back and someone's been filling that run, that we need to have a process, and then the individual accepts that. Person comes back, they fully understand that they're gonna be at the bottom of the extra board, taking some, what we call not as attractive work for a while. But their seniority is being honored, and at some point, the union management's gonna put together a bump down, they're gonna be able to exercise their right and say, hey, I'm number 3 on the seniority list. I'm coming back. I'm going right back to where I deserve to be. So it's,
I think we understand the
Okay.
issue.
so that, you know, I mean, we don't have to go through every article, every section, but unless you have anything else, Shay or
Yeah,
Jim.
The only question I have is on section 3, where full-time operator, you struck out, has the right and put may request
Yeah.
the bus on the choose-up.
Yeah.
I think we're still saying the same thing, because it ultimately said in the original language that the county has the right to make final decisions.
I mean, they had a right to request, but they didn't have a right to secure.
Yeah, but before, they chose their bus.
And I will say that, with the choose up, with the run bid, it is stated that like Route 58, this bus is assigned to it. Yes, that's already a factor, right?
Because we want that military bus to go
Yeah.
out towards the Navy base.
So certain
Reporting.
buses, if you pick that job, it's already assigned to it, like UWF. 1501 is job number 1. We understand that. But here, it just looks like, well, if I want to pick 742, no. When that bus can really go anywhere, it's saying that you might come back and say, no, we don't want that one to go on that route, or something in that nature.
I think the county already has that discretion,
Yeah.
based on what this says, in the original contract.
So on the bid, do bus operators pick buses on the bid?
Yeah.
They do.
Well, that's not to say that
But it's
they,
been rare, there ain't nobody ever challenged that. So I guess we just fearful it's gonna get challenged.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Agree with you.
Yeah,
So
and,
it's-
yeah, that just struck me as, you know, may request as, well, it may get denied.
Well, but it already said that well, in the original contract, it said the company has a right to make final decisions. So that was already in the contract. It's just reworded. It's the same language, the same intent.
But we do hear that you have a
Yes.
concern. We hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I think we understand where we're in agreement on 31, even though the language may differ from what was in the TA article and what we have in the article now. Except for, I hear 3 issues. One issue is who conducts the bid, who manages it, whether it's a person who's representing management from the county or the ATU. The second issue is what is the status of a person coming off a leave that's 30 days or longer? And the third is the clarification of the process of requesting a particular bus.
And again, Mike, I just want to mention that we hashed this out before. I'm looking at it, and it's there. I mean, I don't even know why we're revisiting this. It's kind of amazes me that we're back talking about this. We're wasting taxpayer dollars all sitting here, you all sitting on that side of the table, and we're sitting here rehashing something that was already worked out and
Well,
agreed to.
you actually
But-
proposed on March 8th additional language. I believe there was a TA in March
Yes.
of 2018.
So I would agree
Then there
with
was
you.
a discussion in December, which I was not present for that meeting, I didn't know about it. And then we revisited that article in March of 2019, and you then proposed what you called a temporary agreement that you wanted to be included into the already TA'd article,
I
correct?
don't dispute you at all.
And so
In fact, we
actually-
think that's open.
It was reopened.
Well, that-
So,
We
and it's
believe
been
that one-
reopened more than once.
We believe that that one section that we worked diligently with Mike Crittenden on, okay, the former transit director, we worked with him to create a system that we all saw within the organization that we saw as a problem. And we created it to be equal and fair across the board and a process that everyone could accept. The union looked at it, we took it to our membership, they all agreed with it, you know, and they all understood it, and it's been active ever since. That's the amazing part. It's what we're practicing right now today. That, I don't see that being included, but let's move on to 33.
Okay.
33, extra work, extra board operators. This one really caught my attention, and I'm going to let Shay jump in here too, and Jim. But let me ask a question, and maybe I'm never going to say that I'm perfect here, and that I might not, because when I read the strike-throughs, at some points I get frustrated and I have to take a breather and sit back for a minute, okay? So I might have missed it, but I see that the guarantee of 80 hours for an extra board operator is being struck through and no longer available. Is that what you guys see? That's what I see. So are you saying that the historical reference that we've had for forever of having an extra board operator, which is at the discretion of management to work all day long and to cover the work that's available, that now, if they only work 70 hours in that week or 75 hours, that's what they're going to get paid only? Or are they going to be guaranteed the 80 like we
Well-
have had?
Do you not find that odd that you would pay somebody hours that they didn't work?
They're a
I mean,
full-time employee. They were hired to work 40 hours a week. And then because of their seniority, they have been put into the position of an extra board operator, which is there to work, and it's because management hasn't utilized them completely.
So you're saying there are other responsibilities that they could be delegated that would equal 80 hours of work?
Sure, it happens every day,
Well, then, so the question is, why do you need the 80 hours in there? If they're a full-time
Because
employee
if
and they're working a
management makes the
full-time.
mistake and does not fulfill that 80 hours, because I'm going to tell you, Janice, it's not you right now, right? It's not you. It's not her. She's sitting in her office up front. We're talking about dispatchers that got 20,000 things going on all day long, and they're trying to run a schedule with the operations manager, and they might miss the fact that Lalanda's sitting here, and she's an extra board operator, but in the second week, she's about 10 hours short. And instead of assigning her on Friday to come to work and to be able to cover the board or whatever we're gonna do to ensure she gets 80 hours, they forget. So this language ensures that that wasn't her mistake. That was management's mistake because they didn't notice that she was there and, on their, when they were doing their assignments. So she doesn't get punished because she was making herself available. But management comes along and says, oh, no, I'm only gonna pay you 70 hours now. That's not fair. That's not fair. We see it routinely.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
That has happened. So with that being said too, that's why the language was created with the, time slots,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of stuff that's been created is because you have worked and lived on what we was doing before, right? And we going back to management. And you probably don't believe it, but if you don't care for me, they had, yeah, you looking that way, but trust me, you don't understand that world over there. You don't.
It's a different world than the
It's
transit
a
world.
totally different world. So before or prior, we had it where, it was management's discretion on when you come in. And it happens to me. And he stated out his mouth what was gonna happen, and I told him, you can't look into the future and say that I'm gonna do that job, but check it. He put me on that job, just because he was mad with me. You know, and it's not fair. But we're going back to this here. So when you allow someone to choose, you have documents, black and white. That's what everybody won't have proof on if you're doing wrong. But when you have a discretion of someone who is unprofessional and does not mean well by the workers, they go in and they do what they want to do. So when you came through and you scratched through everything here, meaning with the extra board, it's gonna be a disaster.
Our
Seriously. It's
our members
be
are
a
gonna pay the
disaster.
price.
Yes, the members are gonna pay a price on it, not the ones that you're buddy-buddy with, but maybe the good ones that come to work every day. Them gonna be the ones who get kicked in the mouth. Because I don't roll with your group or clique, however you wanna word it, I'm gonna get mistreated, and it's not fair, you know? So, a lot of this in here, because I used to be an extrovert, I've been a little bit everywhere around ECAT. I like to be open and I like to learn stuff, first off. So when you go in and you scratch through this with the 10-hour guarantee, how we got it set up, you don't have to worry about that if it was left alone. Meaning, if you come in at 4:25, you don't get a job at 7:25, you are guaranteed your 8 hours. You work 5 days, that's your 40 hours for that week. But if you was to go back, like he was stating, I tell you, James, I'm gonna need you to come in at 4:25 in the morning. I'm gonna send you home at 7:25, and I forget to call you back. Now you're gonna be short some hours, right? Or I'm going to have you come in at 4:25 in the morning, I'm sending you home at 7:25, then I'm gonna say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna need you to come back at 9 o'clock, and you're gonna get off at 10 o'clock tonight. Is that good? Is that fair? No.
And then when you look at section
That
6,
that didn't happen. I'm serious. It's like,
and when you,
outside looking in, it looks like, oh, it's good, but no, it's not.
and when you look at section 6, which, you know, when a regular operators are required to report to perform extra work assignments, they will be paid not less than 2 hours' time. There's a reason for that. Because the reason that language is there is if I live in Santa Rosa County, like some operators do, or I live all the way across town, doesn't matter where I live, I could live 10 minutes away. We've seen where they come into the door, they walk in, and the dispatcher says, oh, I don't need you now. You can go home now. Turn around, and go home. And they're like, I just drove from East Milton to come here, and now you're telling me to go home? So the language is that, hey, I'm gonna at least get 2 hours pay for making the effort, because the dispatcher or the supervisor didn't make the effort to go call you up before you left your house and said, hey, I don't need you, don't come now. We covered your work.
Yeah, they got
We
an
covered the
extra-
work.
Yeah, they had an extra board driver come in to cover the work, but they failed to call back the person that they called in on their day off. So, yeah, that's why it's there.
And to not say this again, but we hashed Article 33 out in the past. We've hashed it out, and here we are talking about it again. It's kind of amazes me that we're still talking about this, but 33 was done. And I feel there's another agenda why you're striking through all this. I'm not sure what it is, but.
Well, you actually proposed, this was T8 in 2018 in May, reopened again in December at that session where I was not in attendance, and then I believe you all proposed additional terms in March of this year. So it's been reopened repeatedly.
So when it was reopened repeatedly, it's not because it was reopened for any other intention that, which you maybe not know, maybe you're not privy to this, but we have constant communications. We talk to Mike Creighton, based on grievances filed, we will discover and say, that system's not working. And he would agree and say, yeah, we need to fix this. So let's meet. We'd sit down with management and we'd start to sit there at the job and say, we need to fix this. This is not going consistent. We got to make sure it's fair and even for everybody, not favoritism to anyone, other than based on seniority. That's the only time, is seniority. So that, what you're talking about there is we revisited something that Mr. Creighton was supporting and actually pushing for us to get it done. And we brought it in December because that was the reason why, because our team and him they were working on it.
He
And
seen too many grievances about the same thing, and he felt like it needed to be fixed and changed. So that's why
it was not
brought back over.
any other reason why than that. And that's why it was T8 so fast, by the way, in December. So anyways, so what else in extra work that you guys want to ask about? Because there's quite a bit struck through here.
I mean, really, almost everything is struck through. I don't get it. I mean, it's a difference when you're there. You know how they had that follow buddy, come work with me for a week? I think that's what y'all, somebody need to come and really like just trail and work with us for a week and see. It's really not, what people think, It's a lot that we have to deal with from on the bus with the riders, from inside, from the outside. I mean, it looks all good. We do our job to our best ability because we are operators, And it's like, a lot of this stuff, yeah, we done worked for it. I've been there almost 6 years. So I'm speaking on the ones that was before me. They had to go through ins and out, pulling teeth to get what they got. And then when it just come and snatch from us, that's like a slap in the face. It's hard. And I have stated before, it's easier said than done when you're not out there doing it. When you have a set schedule of a 8 to 5, or we got operators who had to be there at 4:25 in the morning. It's
And they don't finish till 7 o'clock?
yeah, and they don't finish
7:30
till
at
7
night.
because of the split, but that's part of the transportation world. You know what I mean? That's what we have to put up with if that's what you want a check for. So that's what we do. We have to make it work. So what we do is, like all the stuff that you scratch through, it makes it where
Gives
now
them-
you can't try to plan to do that doctor's appointment because, or like with the extra board, they go on extra board for a reason, because we have hold downs. When someone goes out, they're doing their run, they might be on vacation. That week, that run might look good to me because check it, they off on Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm off on Saturday, Sunday, but I got a doctor's appointment, don't want to call out, so it works for me, right? So it's the point of everything that y'all just scratching through, it's like you're scratching without really
Knowing the
not
concept.
getting, yeah.
You're giving the total control back to management, so now they're vulnerable because they're waiting, and by the way, again, I'm gonna say this, in the transit world, all this is normal process in the transit world. I mean, it's everywhere, right, in the transit world, the things we're talking about. And, but what's not normal, and what's a practice that I see in Panama City, is, for instance, I see First Transit down there beating up on the workers because they have total control of the schedules. So, for instance, they're violating, so I come to work. I'm gonna give you an example in Panama City, so you get a feel of what we're seeing here. Here's what we're dealing in Panama City, Mike. We have a seniority people, they bid their schedule. They show up to work, they bid their schedule, they're driving along, and suddenly they get a call. It says, we're pulling off of your run that you bidded on, based on your seniority, and we're putting you over on a different run, and we're pulling another person over here to put on your run, and we're going, and they just start moving people around. And people were like, so what time am I getting off? What is my schedule? What's gonna happen to me today? They don't even know. That becomes chaos, because it appears to be favoritism, it appears to be targeting people, because, you know, and I hate to say it, it's reality. You might not believe it, but it's reality at our location. I mean, all these people are sitting behind me, and they'll tell you, if you get on the bad side of the man, you're gonna pay the price at some point. And it happens in maintenance department, for instance, in maintenance department. If you tick off the boss, when the next bid comes, because he knows there's only 13 of you in the shop, he's gonna change your bidding spot because he knows where you're gonna bid, and he's gonna affect you if you tick him off enough. That's been history. We know it. So we're just trying to make things fair and even across the board when it comes to day-to-day operational. We're not trying to do anything to hurt management. I can't help it if management doesn't know how to manage it themselves.
No. Wait. I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna take what he know how to manage it, and I'm speaking on the operation manager that's there now. He knows how to manage it, but when you have the idea to speak to your employees and state that I'm not doing it because I don't want to, or your mindset is not, let me hear what the people have to say, or you in there gossiping in the break room with them, you don't do that. You supposed to be professional. So my thing of it is, I can't take nothing from him. Does he know transit? Yes. But if you don't know how to control the power, you let the power control you, it's never gonna work.
And I think we're kind of making this more about the one individual than.
Right.
Yeah,
if he-
but
if-
yeah, we are, because that's what
Unfortunately,
we dealing with.
If he's not
unfortunately,
there
it's been
tomorrow,
many individuals over the
If
years.
he's not there
It's been many.
tomorrow, if there's someone else tomorrow, we're responding and,
But it's
based
still-
on the issues, based on what this one particular person's, their actions are.
Tanya.
We have someone tomorrow, or even if we do it electronically, we have the software that does it electronically. We're making it about this one particular person and putting in language to, based off this one particular person, not per se of looking at it from the larger picture.
Okay, and with that being said, even if you take that person away today or tomorrow, you're still taking away our language.
Yeah, you're still taking away.
So that's
the-
still there.
the privilege
But you just stated that the
listed.
languages was there based off of what this particular person's actions are
No.
doing.
Based off of history,
Yeah,
off a
it's the
long history.
I'm just
Off a
stating
long
it.
history.
Why don't we do this? Because we've been at this for about an hour, and I do think we're kind of getting off the contract and the contract language a little bit. So I'd suggest we do is we take a caucus, won't be a long one,
Okay?
and we'll come back and address what's been talked about up until now.
That's fine. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you for the caucus. You know, we heard, I heard 4 issues. I'm not saying that's all the issues, but I heard 4 issues.
Okay?
And I want to try to address, I want to give you our thoughts on how to address those issues. And it may be not business as usual, you know, as we go through this. That's what happens, I think, when you get into collective bargaining after a ratification vote has been such that it rejects the contract. You look at the contract again, and we're thinking about, I mean, even some of these things are a year or 2 old, and maybe they need to be revisited. But the three issues that we heard was, one is, who conducts the bid? And we had language in the contract where a representative of management would conduct the bid. You suggested that the union conduct the bid. And what we would like to do is work toward language where the union and management jointly conduct the bid. That a representative of the union and a representative of management work together jointly, cooperatively, and execute the bid. The second issue is what happens when someone is on leave for over 30 days, and they come back, and they go to the bottom, and at what point do they bump? We suggested that they would wait until the next choose up. You suggested that they get bumped in the next pay period, which is at times proven problematic for management because we technically could have people coming back week after week after week during a period of time, and then there's bumps going on with each pay period, which we think is frequent. So, could be frequent and disruptive. So what we're thinking about doing is addressing it. There's a couple ways we thought about it. We kind of think that maybe the best way to do it is to have more choose-ups so that people wait to the next choose-up, but that the choose-ups are so frequent that people aren't finding themselves at the bottom of the seniority list after coming back from leave. So let's say, I'm just not landing in any place particularly, but if we choose up every 2 months instead of 4 months, then people wouldn't wait for more than a couple pay periods at most before they would get adjusted. The third issue I heard in that article was a concern that you would no longer be able to request a particular bus. What we understand is that the current practice is that an operator can request a particular bus when they do a choose-up, and it is generally allowed.
Based on
to have
seniority.
the bus, based on seniority. But if there's some reason that management has to not let that bus do that route, there is a reason, whatever that might be, that management could say, we can't let that bus go that route. We think that's the current practice. We're not trying to disturb that current practice. So we thought our language was capturing it with different language than yours. I think we can get to something that sorts that out so that everybody's okay with it, because we're not trying to change that practice. Before I get off this, I want to express that there was a suggestion that maybe personalities sometimes come to play when we do a choose-up, and that is going to potentially happen no matter who does the choose-up. Whether it's a representative of management or a particular individual, or it's somebody that the union selects. Like you said correctly, everybody has people that they like better than others, And so even if somebody legitimately is not given a route, they might suspect that the person, whether it's someone from management or somebody from the union, is gaming them a little bit. That's going to always happen. So the best way to resolve all that is someday get to a place where we have it done by software. So it's automatic, and there's no personalities involved. So that's something we're also going to explore. There is software out there, and if we can find it and put it into place someday. So it's a software that, does it automatically by the rules. We might be moving to that. We might put something in there just that both of us realize and accept the fact that maybe someday we do have it by software. Going to the next article,
33.
33 with extra board. I think what was spoken to was was two issues, although I know that there's a lot of language that was struck, and I'm not making light of all that. But I think the two issues the question was asked, do we intend to not allow a person to have a guarantee of 80 hours if for some reason, because of the needs of an extra board, they don't get to 80 hours? And we're willing to work with that and see to it that someone who's on extra board gets 80 hours, even if they're not actually operating 80 hours. So we can work with that and restore that operational piece. The other thing that I heard, that we heard, this team heard, I'm not saying me, I just speak in the present person sometimes. All of us looked at the idea and language of having some guaranteed number of hours for a person on extra board who was called in and then not needed and sent home, so that they would have some kind of minimum hours. And we'll accept that practice. We'll go forward with that practice. So those were the 5 issues that I heard and the team heard and the team discussed at caucus. We wanted to bring you in without having too long of a caucus and tell you what our thoughts are on those issues. So that's where we are. We have language that we'd have to work up on that. That's where we are with those things.
So again, I think, so Mike, just to touch base on a couple of the things that you touched on. Software issue. Obviously, software is out there at all transit systems all across this country. And it still is, it's part of the process that we're fully aware of. It's unfortunate that the Escambia County Area Transit and Escambia County is 20 years behind the time doing some of the things they should do. So we're fully aware that there's software out there that would be produced to help create the assignments and actual, but the process of actually bidding and doing the choose-up is still going to be a process that's going to be put in place based on seniority, and you know, that still is conducted. I mean, I've seen software in other locations, and you know, the software's in place, but they still conduct the manual portion of the bidding, allowing based on seniority, bidding on the assignments. That has been created by the software. Just creating software doesn't just put the names in there. It doesn't say, this is who's gonna get this is who's gonna get that, unless you're implying that, which I don't think you are. But the software is something that's been needed here for a long time, there's no doubt about it. We're doing things in the at ECAT that are, you know, manually, that shouldn't be done. I mean, you know, you go to some transit systems, and they actually have people they've hired that do nothing but scheduling and working with that kind of software to produce, usually they're larger transit agencies, but that's, you know, so we're kind of behind the times.
Well,
And we understand that part, we're not gonna dispute that part.
And that could be, I would like to make the point, the obvious point, that, you know, if operationally we're behind the times, it's because the county took over the operation from a private entity that was behind the times.
Yeah, but it's not the fault of the workforce if the county
I'm
who
not saying
contracted
that.
out to a
I'm not-
private
I'm not saying-
entity
I'm not saying-
didn't
yeah.
oversee it.
But we didn't.
That's not the
but
fault of the
county-
private
But the
sector,
county
I mean,
wouldn't
the
micromanage,
workforce.
micromanage the contractor to the point of telling them what to buy software or not. That just didn't, that wasn't,
Well, I've been here many years, there was a lot of discussion about software over many, many years, but it just never happened.
well,
So,
I'm just saying, so now is an opportunity to catch up.
Sure, we hope that you get that kind of grant that would allow you to purchase that. We obviously support a system that would be able to make and ensure that the assignments are created, you
Yeah.
know, properly.
But here's the issue. If the language in the contract is so specific in terms of how that procedure is conducted and who conducts it, then it ties management's hands, and they can't make changes. They can't make improvements to the system to make it more efficient.
I don't see that in this scenario that you're giving, because,
The contract language in the expired agreement wouldn't allow the discretion to implement a software program. It specifies in very detailed terms how that whole procedure is conducted.
so historically, for instance, when you brought cameras in onto the buses, I was there when that happened, remember, Jim? When you brought cameras onto the buses, the union didn't say, no, we're not going to negotiate this. We sat down in the middle of a contract and discussed the implementation of putting surveillance on cameras with audio, video. You know, when that action occurs, I mean, you might be talking software, and it might be 3 years from now. We don't know when it's gonna happen. But to take away the language that we have and the process we do now, that's a concern. Would we be willing to sit down later, in the future, and address this? We'd always be willing to talk about that and to address this. And so I'm not, I also don't, you think it's tying your hands, but I don't see tying your hands in this process. I do see a problem when you mention that you're gonna have management and the union sitting together. I've been there, done that. There is an intent like that, and then there's reality. And the reality is, what I've seen is then management, I'll use the paratransit as an example right now, just because that's what happens now at ECCT. Management and the union sit together. The general manager comes in, sits down. We bring in the 2 union officials. The general manager is controlling the whole process the entire time. And so the workers tend to have a little fear factor because the general manager's sitting there. So they come in and there's a fear factor, isn't that correct, when they do it? And so the workforce doesn't want to even ask questions or anything. And she basically has taken over, Yolanda in this case, has taken over the whole process. And the workers, we're sitting here thinking, why is the union even sitting there? Because she's manipulated it. I've seen that in the past at ECAT as well. I'm not saying that the system we have right now is not broken. I don't see where it's broken. That's the part that I'm a little confused on. It's not broken, is it? It's working. It's improving as we move forward, Ms. Gilly. It's improving. Every time we make a little adjustment here, it's getting better. The process is getting smoother. So when you mentioned the choose-ups, reducing it down to 2 months, I mean, we can talk about that. That's something we can talk about, but I will say, there's language in the existing agreement that already addresses this. It's called special choose-ups and bump downs. These are already in here for the exact reason of not wanting more bids, okay? So if I am, let's use an example. If I'm number 60 on the seniority list, and I stayed out over 30 days, Mike, right? And I'm out, and I could return. It makes a lot more sense to instead of doing a choose-up, is to do a bump down and start from that individual based on their seniority, and we're only going to have to go through 15 people to finish that, instead of doing a whole complete choose-up and starting all over. We have been working on that all along, trying to make this better, and she knows
But
that.
Mike, but then also, using your same example, when we have 3 individuals come back within the same 7 days, and although one may come back in 1 week and we're doing a bump down for this first individual, say Sally, just for a namesake, for Sally, and then we have 2 more coming, so subsequent in that same week, then the following pay period, we're doing another bump down. So operationally, from a payroll and administrative side, then we're having to then, basically, once that bump, you may not see that from your perspective of it, but operationally, it is problematic, because now that, although the bump down may have been from Sally, who may have been, say, number 8 or 9, John that comes back on Thursday of the following week, he may be number 6. So then we're going right back to, as far as operationally, when we're submitting that information to payroll, of having to redo it all over again. So you may not see it from your perspective, but operationally, it does become problematic when we have quite a few folks coming back within a short period of time, which has happened in the past.
So, because I was going to say, you referred to payroll there, okay? I'm not sure what would be the tremendous part of payroll would be submitted there, I'm not quite sure, but I will
Because we
say,
submit each of, whenever everyone is assigned a
aren't
particular
you
job.
just submitting hours?
No. In the actual program that we're actually utilizing, they're putting in the actual jobs that each person is assigned to, and the hours that particular job is assigned.
So it's a data entry thing.
Well, you may see it just as a data entry thing, but if we're doing it on a regular basis, within 2 or 3 times within a 2-week period, you may not see it as just data entry, but it does become problematic.
So it's data entry for one,
yeah, well-
and for the other person, it becomes problematic because it changes their lifestyle as well, which is the person that's providing the service to the citizens. while you have a clerk over here doing data entry, you have an individual that provides a service out there, and based on their seniority, we're kind of ignoring their seniority. We have a process
I
in
don't
place
think
that
that
gives
we're
you,
ignoring their seniority.
well, no, you're, okay. So go ahead, Jim, did you want to add something?
Yeah, you mentioned something about the two-week period. It wouldn't be a 2-week period, because if you had one come back, it would be, after that pay period, it would be actually a 3 or 4-week period until you had another one, if that was to happen. But how many times has that happened?
Quite a few times.
2, 3, 4?
I can get you I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but I can get you the times that we've
I
had
can think
multiple
of at
bump
least
downs within
2.
subsequent weeks,
Yeah.
right after each other.
Which the union conducts the bump down.
Yeah.
Although you may conduct the bump down, operationally, we're still responsible for as making those changes. You may perceive it as, hey, this is only a data clerk or a clerk's process as a part of her job, and it may be impacting another person's lifestyle. At the same time, transit is supposed to have some level of consistency. So if we continually have bump downs, we have several folks that are out 3 or 4 at a time, and when they start to come back subsequently, as we have in the past, yes, that becomes problematic. I'd rather us be fair to everyone. As far as, okay, if we're doing it every 2 months, as it's been recommended, just for conversation's sake, then the ability of that person saying, hey, even though I'm coming back, there's a short amount of time prior to me actually being able to choose again for my job, or if I want to choose a different job, having that ability.
All right, we'll look at that. Let me look here. As far as the bus issue, while the language might show that you still have the ability to do it, I don't see, I guess the concern is what the intent is to change the language. Because if the language is already there for you, why would you even want to change it? So the concern is that,
Well, I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
I-
go ahead, what's it? Oh, it would, well, obviously, if there was software in the middle of a contract, the union's always willing to negotiate it and create an MOU if there's language that needs to be put into the contract addressing software. Historically, we've done that, so. But back to the bus issue, is that,
Well,
I guess when we see changing in language, we start to wonder, is there a different intent? You're saying there isn't, but the problem is there's people that will actually execute the action out of this labor agreement, that we'll see that as something to take another action. We're concerned about that.
Normally, it's based off of, if it's a mechanical issue, the bus is down.
Right.
That's when it's, it's pulled,
well,
something in that nature.
To tell you the truth, reading section 3, I just think the language is more plainly and clearly expressed. It says, operators have a right to request a bus at each choose up. Well,
So-
we're saying that they may request a bus at each choose up.
Well, obviously, if we could change that language, we'd want the word will. That's obvious. But let me say this, Mike.
Well, sometimes people might not want to
Mike,
request a bus.
I think it's important that we express this across the table to you.
Mhm.
We consider this labor agreement, which has been negotiated for 74 years now,
Okay.
a working document that is a worker's document. It is not, no disrespect, it is not an attorney's document. I don't look to see language. If I'm a basic worker, I should be able to open this document and understand it. And I'm sorry, if the language doesn't come across to, and we hear this all the time, words matter. They do matter. If I read it and I can't understand it, it's not helping me in my labor agreement. So yes, when you look at the ECAT contract compared to other labor contracts you probably deal with, this is more straightforward, looks like a bus driver wrote the language.
Well,
We're okay with that, because we believe that once you start to change the language, and it becomes the document that you write, Mike, right? obviously, that's your skill. The words matter, and you're gonna add language in. That's gonna become very concerning to us. So I wanna make sure that, for the record, that as we move through this document, I'm not looking to make this a management or attorney's document. This is it's called a labor agreement. It's a labor agreement for the workers. And the history behind this document has been clear that it looks like an agreement that's for the workers, that they can understand.
Okay, I'm glad, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because really no one on this side is trying to make this a document that's written in such a way that it takes a lawyer to understand. That's not our intent whatsoever. I appreciate your concern, because we don't want to do that. Actually, I'm not arguing with you being facetious, but I think that to say full-time operators may request a bus is less legalese than full-time operators have a right to request a bus. The latter being more legalese. And I think, so, no, we're actually trying to make it more plain spoken. And at the same time, I appreciate that it's a document that you're negotiating on behalf of the people in your bargaining unit, and you want them to like it, be comfortable with it, understand it. That's all good. We're okay with that too. Although at the same time, there may be instances where we have suggested changes to this contract because it is a legal document. And the individual who, we want managers and supervisors to be able to understand it and have clear direction. We want the employees of the bargaining unit to read it and be able to understand what their rights are. We also have to be mindful of the fact that if we have a dispute over what the language says, because two people can disagree about language, no matter how, particularly if it's mutually agreeable language, someone's just not writing it unilaterally, you have to come to an agreement on language. That sometimes that language is given to an arbitrator to interpret. So we have to, I'll be honest with you, every time I look at a sentence in a contract, I say to myself, is there anything about the sentence that an arbitrator would find to mean something other than what we intend?
Sure, and then, obviously, there's history, there's intent, there's actions that, practices that will support that.
Yeah.
And,
But sometimes arbitrators look at a sentence and say, I'm reading this way, and I know that wasn't the intent. It happens. So
I understand that.
You try to make it as clear not only to the people who live with the contract, but clear to the arbitrators
so,
that interpret it.
so Mike, I just go back to, we can sit here and beat this down all day, but I will tell you that I just, for the life of me, can't figure out why we're revisiting all this when we already did this. But that's, I understand that you say that you were directed to do so. So sure, that's completely being straight up, because, I'm a little concerned about that. But I will say that it's, to me, I think this has been hashed out pretty good over the last 22 months. And here we are back discussing these kind of issues, which is, I think there's a bigger picture that's being dealt here. This is day-to-day operational stuff. I don't understand why we're trying to beat this down when we have a history of just communicating on this on a day-to-day operational process and then trying to fix it ourselves. Yes, the language is there, but
Well, I think the more specific that you put the language in the contract, this, then the more your hands are tied from providing alternative ways of handling situations, right? So that. So there are some things in here that do appear to be very convoluted in the way they're handled. I understand what you said, which is these have been put in here because of practice and history.
Right.
And so I am sorry that there have been issues that have made you have to do that. in some of these situations, okay? So I want to say that I heard exactly what you said, and I'm sorry that there have been things that have put you in the position of having to be so specific and detailed in this contract versus having a contract in which you could sit down, resolve things, and then not worry necessarily that you're going against the contract that you've ratified and agreed to. So I can't go back and undo history. And I'm certainly not going back to 1946, because none of us would go back to 1946.
So-
Most of us wouldn't be in this room in 1946.
Well,
So,
I
what
have
I'm
to
saying.
respect what happened between the history, between then and here, too, because there's, you know, Ms. Gilly, I'm going to say that the transit workers, as you know, were privatized for all those years. And, you know, there's a long history of going without and having to fight tooth and nail just to have what they think was basic rights that eventually, I mean, I don't want to go too far back, but the 1970s is when FRS kicked in, right? Right, 1970s, Mike? Yeah, I think that's about when the FRS kicked in. And transit workers didn't even have a pension until 2004.
But
So-
Mike, there is not, we provide a lot of benefits, so that's not what we're talking about today.
Well,
I mean, we're not about to take any benefits away from any of your employees in terms of retirement or pay.
well, I haven't seen that yet, because you haven't.
Yeah, and we wouldn't, we're
Okay.
not gonna, why? We're not gonna do that. I
Well-
mean, you know we're not gonna do that.
I don't know that, so
Well,
we're going to
I'm
find
sorry
out.
I'm sorry that you,
What?
I'm sorry that you don't know that.
I don't know that because we're dipping into other parts of this contract that I'm sitting there saying we've already agreed to. So when,
I understand that you say that. I'm not saying
I think
that.
our whole team wonders that,
Yeah.
right? Our whole team is wondering where this is going.
Well, I
So,
don't think we could take, I mean, if you're a county employee, we can't take your FRS away from you.
well, no, we're talking
I
about,
mean-
Yeah.
we're talking about all benefits is what we're
I,
talking
I don't think we could take it, I mean, if you're a full-time employee and the county offers you those benefits, those are your benefits. I mean, we can't take those away from you.
And we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see when you give us the rest of your package.
We would not.
Take away.
I want to be definitive to you. We would not take benefits that are legally allowed and provided to you as to any other county employee. We
As
would
to
not,
any other county employee. So if we, well, I guess I got to wait to see what they're going to present, because I can think of a few benefits that transit workers get that other county employees don't get. And I'm wondering if those are going to be suggested to be taken away. I don't know yet till we see. So we'll wait. We'll wait to see if you provide that to us. And we'll determine that once we see it. You're kind of looking at me like you're shocked, but I could give you an example. Bereavement. I know that county workers don't get bereavement. It's used through their sick time. We have a specific article that says bereavement and is applied to us and given to us.
I
Right?
believe there is bereavement leave in the HR policy manual.
Again, you reference HR manual, but the HR manual says to county employees, you have to use your bereavement through using their sick leave. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes.
When you look at the ECAT contract, we have specific language that says bereavement, and we have designated time, that is specifically, we get 3 days, up to 5 days, 2 days without pay, I think, we get additional pay designated for bereavement.
But can I-
The reason that's there is because, I'm sorry, Lorraine, just 1 second.
No,
The reason is because for many years, county transit workers didn't get any bereavement. And they fought for it through labor negotiations, and they got it. And when they got it, they've been trying to maintain it. We started out getting, you could only go to your spouse's funeral. Then the language from 1946, moving on, added your children. And then it slowly added on your parent. Every step of the way through negotiations, we improved it slightly every 3 years, or so on, to get where we're at. And I'm not saying that you're gonna do that. I don't know if you're gonna do that, but I can, hearing what she said, is that I'm kind of expecting it may be possibility to come across the table. And I'm saying to you, that's taking away a benefit that the employees have on the transit system, is that they have negotiated bereavement. And not that anybody ever wants to use it, but it's a fact.
May I ask a question? And don't
Sure.
bite my head off, because.
No, I'm not gonna bite your head off.
And I think you know that I don't want to ever take anything away from an employee. But my question is, if you're a custodian and you're a bus driver, I think you're both doing a service for the Escambia County. If you're a road prison correction officer, you're doing a service, a firefighter, anybody, we're all doing a service for this county. So I guess my question is why should one group of people have different benefits than other sets of employees? Does that make sense what I'm asking? I mean,
I understand, and you're very welcome to give everybody a bereavement policy if you
I'm
want.
not,
Sorry, Jim, I was thinking the exact same thing. I was sitting here thinking, no offense
No,
back
but I
at you,
mean, I'm
Lorraine.
just saying-
I was sitting thinking to myself that any county worker that watches this video is saying, yeah, give me 3 additional days guaranteed for bereavement. They would probably all go, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, transit workers, for fighting for that, okay?
but
But-
that's not what I'm just trying to say that we're all servants of Escambia County and the citizens. And
They
that's,
all deserve it.
But I
We
also
don't wanna
think,
but I also think we should,
and he said it, thank you for
Yeah,
saying,
no, we just don't want to go backwards.
why would we go backwards? Why would we take away what we have already fought for and earned in our labor agreement? Why would we do that? I mean, we have language specific in our labor agreement, Mike, that talks about holidays. I know we're drifting off away from, but I just want to say this out loud so you get a good feel for where we're at. We have specific language because transit workers have to work often on major holidays. We have language that talks about modified holidays. And it's to ensure that people are conducting the business, and it provides the service. But it gives the transit workers an option to say, I'm gonna, based on my seniority, I take off that day. Because generally on a modified holiday, or for instance, it normally would have been Veterans Day, for instance, as an example, or Christmas Eve, or New Year's Eve, something like that, President's Day. The second option would be that an employee could work it, right? Get holiday pay, and for every hour they worked, we negotiated this in good faith, they get time and a half. Okay? That's a pretty good deal too, right? But you know what? It's getting people to work that day and provide that service today. And then the third option is to say, you know what, I'll get holiday pay, I get work for straight pay, is that the option? But I get a floating holiday that I have to use within 365 days. The point is, when you say that, Lorraine, I bet there's some county employees that if they had to work on a holiday, would be sitting here going, that's a pretty good deal. I'd like that too. It's just an improvement of life for that person. It's providing a better service to encourage people that, hey, you're not being punished for working on a holiday. You're not gonna be punished for it. We're taking care of you. I know that contradicts what the county likes to do, because the county likes to give, if you have to work on a holiday, you get holiday pay and time, and you get straight pay for all hours worked. Is that correct? I think that's what you get. It's basically double time. Transit workers get double time and a half. I personally know that county workers would love that. So instead of going backwards, why aren't we talking about moving forward and fixing, and maybe that could be, just because the transit workers have it, doesn't mean we should go backwards. Maybe the thought process is, maybe it doesn't happen now, maybe it happens in the future, but maybe the county workers come behind them. When I reference firefighters, paramedics, I don't know, I actually think firefighters, paramedics probably get something different, so I don't know, without looking at the
reality
contract.
is, you know what, we're fiscally constrained. I mean, that's the bottom line. It always comes down to a little bit of money, doesn't it? I mean, in some situations, most situations.
So that's why I said, Ed, that's why I said that maybe it doesn't happen for some at this point, but it's obviously been in the budget for the transit workers. We have a separate budget. We aren't funded through the general fund, which we were for years. When Ms. Gilly was a commissioner, we were in the general fund at that time. And I would come to the negotiating table and I'd think to myself, this is crazy. Every time I come to the negotiating table, it's the same budget, but there's no room for improvement to make lives better, because it actually felt like the workers were going backwards. So we had discussions, and we said, hey, we're gonna start pushing this gas tax, because you know what? We can help the county, we can help provide a better service, and fund this service independently. And obviously, that happened. And it's often been forgotten that the gas tax has relieved the general fund. It's often forgotten when it has. And actually, it's brought in some good money into the system. It's pretty consistent every year. So where do we go from here, Mike? What else? Still waiting to see if you got a package for us, so we're waiting to see it.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to bring to our attention? Before we leave what we have on the table, you took our attention to two specific articles and raised some concerns, and we responded to those.
Well, I mean-
I'm sure that you probably have.
Mike, I got one question on
Yeah, sure.
Article 31, section 5 here, but it's,
Page 13.
yeah, page 13, it's section 7 in the old. Anyway, you struck through that article where it says operators may eat on the bus at the end of the line, provided such operator secures the bus and so on and so forth. What was the logic behind that?
It's right here.
Section 5.
Section 5, page 13.
Why do y'all have a different, position on that?
Well, yeah, in the contract as it is now, it says operators may eat on the bus at the end of the line. I'm curious because some of these operators are out there all day long, they don't have an opportunity.
We don't have a lunch break.
Don't have a lunch break and
And don't return back to the station.
They don't return back to the station, and that's
The
the
question
only time
is,
they get.
was it our
to take a
intent to
bite
say
of
that?
the
Too much detail.
Yeah, I think the intent was, I think the intent was
It was-
Oh, Jim,
It was.
Jim, I just heard their answer.
Yeah.
put it in a, and it was kind of out of place, and you had mentioned maybe making that as part of an operating procedure or policy.
We don't intend to make a change to that practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so let's go to retirement for a second. 42?
Okay.
All right. So, let me get to it. If I can find it. I think I've shuffled my stuff around here. So, under retirement, let me make sure, under section 3, it says, so are you, just make sure we got it straight here. Full-time employees currently employed upon the date of ratification, this is one of those, this is one of the issues that was still open. Okay, that was, well, it wasn't open, but it was open. It's now officially open to us. Full-time employees currently employed upon the date of ratification of this agreement will, with at least 20 years of service who retire between the ages of 60 and 64, may elect to participate in the county's group health insurance program single coverage plan until the age of 65. Qualifying employees will be required to pay the single employee contribution rate, and the county will provide the employer contribution rate. So I hear it. I think that's a great thing. It's actually a little different than what we even agreed to in April, but, you know, I don't think we're going to have much to say about that one. And we're, you know, that was the original intent, to get to there, and I hope that, you know, we share it with the other county employees. Sick leave payout, so we've read what you proposed, and that was another issue that was still kind of open. And so we're not going to, I think there, we're entertaining that one as well.
Okay.
Okay? But then we get to section 5. In section 5, the retirement buyout proposal. So in April, this was one of those things that was being held out, and we had discussions across the table. And there was a discussion, it was told to us that there were $350,000 for the buyout. That's it. That's what the commissioners approved. That's what it was there. And we said, well, listen, here's where our position is. let the union put together something back to you, which we did, that would kind of break it down and have a discussion, that we would find out what employees were interested in the buyout, and then have a period where then we would, based on their years of service, would determine how much they would get. And then there was a period where, prior to it being implemented, an employee could pull themselves out by saying, you know what, I thought I was gonna do a little better than that, so I'm gonna pull my name off the hat. And then that money that they pulled out with would be applied to the other folks that are still sitting there, that are, so we had a great discussion, Amy Lavoie and us, about that. We had kind of come to a conclusion. We had met, and we have a good idea of the employees that were interested in this. And the whole intent of the buyout was something that we were happy to hear. That was something that could be addressed for those senior employees that have been doing this service with honor and dignity for all these years, and that are walking away from this job with basically very little. They don't have state retirement. And when we became county employees in April 2018, these employees were not, under state law, not allowed to buy into or be recognized for their years of service. We all understand that, right? And so, and then.
Did First Transit not have retirement?
So first, ma'am, I'd love to answer that for you,
Yeah, I
because I
thought
want
they
to make
did.
sure you understand. First Transit had a 401K. Well, I can go a little further back. I said 2004 is when we had a terrible retirement, all the way up to 2004. Jim was talking about it this morning, and he was telling us it was like a 50-cent match thing. It was really crazy. We had people that were retiring back in those days. I remember a senior driver named Eddie Turner. He went to retire, and I'll never remember looking at him as the example of a professional operator, Miss Gilly. He was slim, trim, good-looking, older gentleman. Uniform always pressed. His riders loved him on Route 4 back in those days. And I said to him, Mr. Turner, I think you're what I want to be one day. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah? And I said, congratulations on your retirement. And he looked at me and he goes, young man, you don't even know. I started here, there was no health insurance, there was nothing. He says, I got $38,000 in the bank for my retirement. I'm gonna live off Social Security. And he was late 60s at the time. And at that point, the light went off in my head. I said, oh my God, I don't want to be him when I'm 60s. So we started pushing for a 401K. Jim Stanton and others and I, we pushed for it. We got a 401K in place, Ms. Gilly. I'm just giving you history because you asked the question. We got a 401K in place under Veolia Transportation. And obviously, it was negotiable. The percentages, the employer matches were smaller. So it wasn't, it wasn't like a tremendous amount of money, not a lot. It was, employer match of 2%, 1.5, or whatever it was to start it off. And it slowly built up as we negotiated the contract. But in 2008, the stock market went crazy. You know what happened there. And me personally, I lost, I can't remember, a ton, $30,000 plus. And I was like, oh, God, there goes my retirement. Now, yes, did we come back a little bit after that? We did. But we realized then, that's when we started coming to the county and start preaching, hey, we want FRS too. We want 2010, 11, we started screaming at y'all saying, hey, this is something maybe we want. Because we noticed we meet county workers and we hear what they had, and we're like, wait a second, we got transit workers. So, yes, First Transit had a 401K, and we built those percentages up to what they are when you took over, which was pretty impressive to get to those numbers as far as an employer match. But I will say that the problem with that is that it's in a 401K, so not everybody participated, because some people, if they made less, they didn't participate because they needed their income.
Or if it was a single income family and, she couldn't, or he couldn't contribute that much to the 401, or not at all, to pay to make ends meet. It was just an obligation that was more if you could put in 1%, 2%. Some people didn't even contribute at all.
And then First Transit pulled a stunt on us where they didn't do matches they were supposed to, and we had to fight them tooth and nail, and ended up on the front page of the News Journal where they it said they didn't pay 129,000 towards our 401K. The reality was, it was 180-some thousand dollars that they didn't contribute, and if we hadn't gone public on it, it would have never been paid.
But what you're basically saying is being a county employee and getting access to FRS has been a good thing.
Not one person will deny that, other than the senior people will say, you know, I'm not really gonna benefit from this, obviously.
Because it was so late.
So late. I mean, I'm in that 50th range right now where to get 8 years of vesting, and then I'll be pushing into my 60s. I probably have to work into my 70s to get a decent retirement check. But you know what? We're living with that. We accept that. We understand that process. We are more thrilled that people that are younger in our membership, and we're so thrilled that people that come off the street are gonna benefit from this. And we're happy to look back at Mr. Turner and say, Mr. Turner, we fought your fight. We continue to fight for you, sir. But getting back to this buyout, we were thrilled when the county talked about it, right? Right. But it's different than what we talked about at the table before. This is not, I can literally look at this right here and tell you, you might as well just take it off. If this is what it is, you might as well take it off the table, because I can tell you, not one of the senior people is gonna take this. It's not enough for them. Maybe one. We might have one, because he's been waiting to leave for quite a while, but, you know, he's been just saying, please, let me get out the door. But, you know, this is right back to the beginning of what you offered, and it does not give a significant amount of money for them to walk away. Some of them are saying, okay, well, you know, that's on your choice, because you got a significantly older generation that's in the transit system, and that's due to the history. And they're sitting here working here, and they're in their late 60s, 70s, we got quite a few in the 70s.
Yeah, quite a few in
And-
the seventies, and like we were saying, you know, if they didn't contribute that much to the 401K, they're in the same boat, I'm in the same boat they are. They might be 70, but I started the same, I've been there 35 years. They started the plan at the same time I did. I'm caught in the middle just like Mike is. If I'd put in 30 years for the county and went 5 years in the drop, I'd be gone right now, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I'm caught in the middle. I've got to work till I'm 64, 65. Oh, yeah, at 65, I can go in the drop, but who's gonna go in the drop at 65? I'm gonna go to Social Security at 65. But you see what I'm saying? You're caught in between, or there's people that are 70, 69, 74 years old that isn't gonna benefit at all. And this is what's gonna benefit me.
Okay.
So we just think that, I know you're getting tired, huh?
I'll ask you in a minute about this.
Need lunch?
Hey, you opened this door, you could have been talking about 5 articles, we could have been done with the contract, Mike. It's gonna go on for a while now.
Go ahead.
So, oh yeah, you're getting paid by the hour, aren't you? I forgot. Yeah. I'd like to make your wage, Mike. So, I just wanna say that the retirement, if it's 350,000 and that's what was budgeted by the commissioners, and that's what I've been told by many people, Amy LaVoy being one of them, that was what was budgeted, let us help you out, and here's what we did have a discussion, and I'll say this up front to you. We didn't say if it ends up being one person, that he's gonna get $350,000. No one said that. No one said that in these negotiations. What we said is it's gonna be reasonable. Reasonable to us could be that if it ends up being 4 people, yeah, they could get, what is that, 80,000? 85,000? They could. But you know what? After having 30-plus years of service, 85,000 seems pretty reasonable for somebody who's given their life to public service in the capacity we're in. So, all we're saying is, let's go right back to where we were before, where we were at. Let's be there. Let's do that. Let's take care of the individuals that are at the top, because, you know, the only option I see what's happening is you're dragging this out so they can, you're trying to get them out the door somehow, and maybe that's what's happening here. I tried to propose this to be taken out of the labor negotiations. I tried to propose that so we could take care of these senior people. Because there are individuals, Ms. Gilly, that are they're just waiting.
Oh, I know.
They're just waiting. They just want to move on with their life.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to leave with dignity. That's all I want.
I mean, you
So-
said 85,000, Mike was talking about, what, that 2 years, if it's budgeted right?
They might be able to drag it out over
Maybe
3.
four.
Maybe 4 if they
Maybe 4.
conservatively do
Yeah.
$20,000 a year and try to live off that with their social security. They, you know,
Back when we were growing up, 85,000 was, oh my God, nowadays
it doesn't go very
it.
long. One doctor's bill and it might take most of it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Car wreck.
you know, so,
Okay, well, all right, I got that note.
okay. So I can ask this question about your miscellaneous, because we previously had a few
Sure.
things that were open and miscellaneous. The union was fully aware that we had to talk about light duty. There were a few things that were done at that April 25th meeting. Light duty was one of them. But I see you only have 4 things listed here, and the actual miscellaneous that was done was much longer. What happened there? I need a little help to understand what's happened here. So, the one that we agreed to before had, let me find it.
The article had not been TA'd.
Okay. Section, okay,
It was
well,
still being discussed.
okay, so
There
let
were
me,
several open items. And this is what we've landed on as our proposal.
so, I hear you. So I wanna throw out to you, I'm looking at, the dates that we worked on these things, and we did it by bullet. We said, okay, this has been agreed to, this hasn't, this is still open. And I understand, from my perspective, the things that really were contentious that were still sitting out there was light duty, which actually on March 8th, we didn't put it to paper, but until April 25th, until we had a discussion there. But there was an agreement reached about light duty, about what's gonna happen here with light duty, which is basically, the law prevails on light duty, right? And, go ahead. Did you want to say, okay, tied to workers' compensation, right? So, once you're released, our agreement was basically the short way. If there was available light duty at ECAT, that would be option 1. If the employee couldn't do the option of option 1, then it would be opened up to the option of B, which would be, or number 2, which would be, open it up to other departments that they could work in. But we had little agreement on the side that it was to confirm that they still fall under the labor agreement of ECAT, that they wouldn't be, so the processes of grievance process, if they had to be disciplined, would be done through that. And then there was the third option, if they didn't want to go work in another department, that they would basically just say, I'll go home and collect 66 2/3 of my check, and that's it. So I don't know where we're off, I don't know why we're off there. All the other bullets, except for one other bullet, which is, let me find it. Well, we had 2 other bullets, I'm sorry. Maybe your position has changed, but I'll tell you, it was agreed to on April 25th, that, and the union agreed with your management team sitting there at that time, that what we want is a final document, Mike, that has a labor agreement, and we agreed that it's only, what's the wording we used? For viewing purposes only, in the back of the labor agreement would be tied to it, would be the HR Human Resource Manual, the drug and alcohol policy, a few items. Because when we produce the final document, we want our members to be able to open up one document, not to have to search around in their lockers, in their car, in their house, and try to figure out, okay, where's that at? Where is that in the, HR policy? Where is all this? We want it all, and we were agreeing with you that we weren't giving the message that it was being negotiated. You understand? We're not saying that because it's in back of the labor agreement, it's being negotiated. We would even put a clause that says it's just here for the purpose of viewing. We offered that up back then. We just wanted the convenience for everyone to see that. But when it comes to all the other bullets, I'm a little concerned, because they were agreed to by Ms. Lavoy, and, but she's saying she didn't, I guess she's trying to say she didn't have the power, I don't know. But they were all, most of them were agreed to already. And, I got her signature on our documents here, that, you know, the original documents, that she took one and I took one, so, I don't know.
Well, can you just tick them off for us so we know what you're looking at?
Well, in the end, we're gonna give you something across the table.
Okay.
That will show you what we believe is everything that was TA'd before versus what was still basically, what we believe that you thought was still open. And a lot of it pertained to that email that she sent over. We kind of agree. We say, okay, that's what we think the commissioners meant when they said, go back and fix this contract, or go back to continue this contract. We feel like those items were the items they wanted us to talk about. But I'll give you that here before you
Okay,
leave.
good. That'd be great.
Yeah, that way we don't have to talk about every one, but, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
tuition reimbursement, you know, and then, you know, some of these are already here, but there are
Yeah,
others.
tuition reimbursement is there.
Right. The printing of the labor agreement. Is that on there?
No.
No.
No. So we had agreement, that, you know, printing of the labor agreement, the cost of it would be split, so. Cost would be shared by both parties.
Okay.
Amy's agreed to that, so. Because we think it's important that every bargaining unit employee should have a copy of their labor agreement. I mean, how do you hold them accountable if they don't have a copy of it? You don't physically hand them a copy of their labor agreement.
Okay.
So,
Can we take a break soon? I'm sorry.
sure. Sure.
We've been going for about an hour now, and I could use a bathroom break, and maybe we could also take a little break for lunchtime. It's 12:30.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
We can do that. When do you want to stay? We're close to some places, so we can be back at, what time is it now, you said?
It's 12:30.
What time is,
Um,
how much time do you want?
1:45?
Well,
Okay.
how about it? Okay,
What
that's
you gonna
fine.
say? 1:31 at one.
1:30 or 1:45, whatever works for you.
All right. So,
Yeah?
where we at, Mike? I mean, oh, is that how I turn it off? Just reach underneath there and hit a switch? So, I'm assuming by your reaction when we weren't on the video that when we were on the break, you're not going to give us anything across the table today? Is that what's going to happen?
Not, just what we gave you yesterday and
Okay.
consider that.
It was kind of, you know, we thought okay, that's
Well, we
fine.
heard you say today that you would like to see less changes than more changes, so we want to go back and look at everything we have to make sure that we're kind of doing that, where there's something that doesn't need to be changed, or language that, you know, is saying the same thing, but we could live with the language, we might just stay with that. So rather than complicate the situation by giving you another set today,
Mhm.
we want to take another look at that set.
Okay, so we can appreciate that. So we're going to hand you something here. We only have two, so, because it's very thick. And the treasurer left the room and she was like, no, you're not making 10 copies of those. She's not going to allow me to do it. So we have two of these for you. So we'll give you each one. Give that to me, please. And so let me just tell you what it is.
Okay.
So instead of you flipping through it, because you're going to know what it is as soon as I
I was just looking for my name.
you were just looking for your name. So you knew it was coming. So basically, as we heard you today, this morning, you kind of hit on your document that you gave us. And we asked you about clarification of what you gave us. Because, you know, we from our perspective, we can sit here and rehash everything out and continue to do that. And we just think that it's going to be reliving it. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to, unless there's another intent that we don't know, I just don't believe that the county commissioners would say, after so many executive sessions, which I don't know happens in your executive sessions, they're private, I get that, but knowing that you went into so many executive sessions, that you didn't present to them the TAs that we have, and if there were issues back then, you would have probably come back and said, listen, we can't agree to this TA before I put my name on it, or, I can't do that because the commissioners are concerned with that. We don't believe that you would do that, okay? So we think that, and we don't think that you're trying to, just because they said revisit the entire contract, that you're going to, we hope that's not your intent, was to say, okay, fine, we're gonna start all over and we're gonna fight this out all over again. I think that's putting the workforce in a bad scenario. These folks are waiting for their union contract. They're waiting to get it done. They want to move on. They want to work on the true business of the transit. We know that the county has an intent to try to improve the transit system. We know that the transit director has a program, if you will, or a goal that she's put together, a program, right? I don't know what you called it.
I mean, it's a goal.
It's a goal. It has things that we actually have talked to her about. We said we support those things. We look to try to work with you on that. We want better customer service. We want efficient service. We want to promote we want better quality. We want people, the improvement of attendance and things of that. We want all that. But I think sometimes when a labor agreement hasn't been done, workforce is disruptive. They're not happy. They're concerned. They're not sure, what's going to happen next. And so there's a lot of stress. I mean, the young man that was just here, Michael Brooks, that came in and kind of interrupted your caucus.
Right.
This is the kind of commitment we have from someone. He's on his off day. He signed up to make himself available for overtime. He gets the call. He's driving all the way out to Cantoma to put his uniform on and turn around and work for a couple hours. But that's a commitment. That's someone that's probably not going to make much because he's going to spend gas going back home and, that kind of thing. And to me, that's more of a commitment than it is just trying to make a bunch of money, because you're going to get 2 hours of pay for driving all the way out in Cantoma where he lives. So we hand you that packet because those are all the TAs. And when you look at it, you're going to see, for instance, Article 1, you're going to have where you and I have signed off on it, right? So it will just show that you and I signed off on it. And then the one behind it is the one that I originally gave the county for consider in front of the commissioners, which same thing. It just says TA, it says the exact same thing, okay? So it's kind of double there. That's why it's so thick. But we believe that all these articles are done, okay? We believe that we should be just focused on the issues at hand that we think that the commissioners really had the intent to not approve, which is a handful of things. Maybe 5 articles and a couple, we thought we could identify those things and say, let's move on. Let's get this contract done. Let's move on. The county can get the transit workers off their agenda, and you can move on to the firefighters, the EMTs, the blue-collar county workers, the PBA, whatever else contracts you have. We didn't work 22 months on a contract and TA 47, 48 articles for nothing. Why would we do that? This is a point where we should say, let's move on. Let's finish this contract. We put it across to you and say to you, that's where we believe. You'll notice when you flip through it, you'll see the items that are probably in dispute, which have Amy's name on them, and some of them will have, you'll just want to dispute some of those. I don't necessarily agree with the December items, but I understand the intent about April 25th. Even though I know I was sitting in that room, and I might have been the only one sitting across the table, and that might have been the problem. But maybe if there was a camera, we'd be not sitting here today. But because it would have shown what really happened. There was a true intent to finish that contract. But I get it. There's not actual TAs and some of that stuff. And so we're willing to sit back and we can talk about them. We know what items they are.
Okay.
We would like to come and have you, say, let's schedule a date as soon as possible. Come back and let's start on those items and finish this contract and move on and not revisit all this stuff and do what we did today, which is talk about assignment of runs, talk about extra board, which we've already done. It's right there, it's in TAs, it's been signed. Mike, we're gonna be wasting our time. And all we're gonna do is be disrupting the workforce. And all we're gonna be doing is making the workforce think, what are they really, what's the county doing to us? Why did we pay our union officials to sit at the table for all those times, and now they're revisiting what they already did? As you know, we took it to our membership. They ratified it, because, that's what we do. And they ratified it, they've seen this, and some of them said, we went backwards on this item a little bit. We went backwards on this item a little bit. Okay, some of them weren't happy, because it might have affected them individually. But then we always threw out the one thing that we benefited from, this entire negotiations that we acknowledge, which is the FRS. We told them, hey, we picked up something that's very important, it might, it's gonna help people. And once we became county employees, yeah, did the union sit at the table on March 8th and talk about having a union leave pool that went from 110 days down to 600 and 600 hours per year, and 500 hours for negotiations over that 3-year span? Yeah, we talked about that. And Amy and I came to, we had an agreement on the 24th of April. But, okay, I understand, that's a problem. But, we can visit that. We can talk about that. Of course, we have a grievance process, which, by the way, Mark is still asking me.
I'll get
Are you
to
going to
that.
respond to him?
Yeah.
'Cause he's,
I'm going to respond to him. I want to respond to him in writing
sure.
because, and I haven't been in my office since the last time we've met.
Right.
On the road, since that time, but I'll be in
He's
Tallahassee.
taking it as maybe you don't want to respond.
Yeah, well, no, I'll respond.
He says normally he gives people a week to respond like that, but,
Well, if you talk to him, tell him,
I will.
I'm not ignoring him.
I'm going to tell him, I'm hoping that within a few days,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, very good, I'll let him know. It's important.
Yeah, I just really have not been physically in my office in Tallahassee. in a while.
I'll tell him that. I'll definitely tell him that. But I just think that this is a crossroads where we have to make a decision on both sides,
All right, well, we understand your position, and we're going to talk and look through what we have prepared, both what we gave you and what we have not. We'll look through this, and we'll get back with you.
Can we look at dates for the next session?
Not without Janice.
I think we need Janice. Why don't you do this, Mike? Why don't you give us your availability?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow?
Friday.
Gotta advertise.
I would suggest January.
I know. We're going to push it out that far, huh?
Well, with the holidays, I know that we had difficulty scheduling a session with the firefighters and found one date in December that Janice was free, and that's now reserved for that bargaining session. So I would anticipate it being in January.
Okay, so I can say we're pretty open. So we're sitting here just waiting for you to respond and tell us the dates, because, we're going to do what it takes, because as far as we're concerned, we want to get a contract. We want to move on. And so we just don't want to be meeting for a few hours, obviously, that, we want to get this done. So
Yeah.
we want 2 days consecutive.
Okay.
We think that's important, if 2 days are needed. And, we'll be curious what your position is of what our position is, so.
Okay.
Could you give us an idea of the items that you consider open?
Sure. We can go through real fast. Huh? Yeah, so let me, excuse me while I turn pages, so I can literally just look at them and find them. So we believe that it's your position, and we're not going to dispute this, is that, let me find it. So Article 7, which is union business, we know that you have some conflicts, and I think it's really tied to, other than what you TA'd in December, it's tied basically to the number of days that we're on the table negotiating. The last that we talked about, March 8th, was 600, 600, and 600
Well, we
for
gave you
three-year
a proposal yesterday that included that
well,
article.
I'm just telling you that,
So that's our proposal.
So, let me just say, your proposal is kind of insulting, because we had discussions with your former administrator that was right on target to 600, 600, 600, and 500 for actual negotiations. I don't know why you would want to go backwards in time. And why would the union, we're already giving up what we had, which was 110 days. We did this in good faith on the behalf of our membership, because we knew our membership was gaining FRS and things of that nature. So we went from 110 down to 60 days, 60 days, 60 days, and then 50 for negotiations throughout a 3-year contract. Just using these negotiations as an example, we would have exhausted that pretty quickly. I know that, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't look too closely at everything. I'm not sure if you're saying, and just let me ask you on what you gave us, are you saying that we get 120 hours and that's it?
That's correct.
So, I might as well say this right now and just get it out there. How do we represent our members with 120 hours a year? There's no, I can tell you, 120 hours could be sucked up so fast in just negotiations, it's going to disappear. Then there's no more hours to represent our members for grievances, for research of representation. There's nothing to meet with management. There's nothing left of that. Because when you say that, I'm assuming you're saying it's 120 period, not including when we are able to take off on union business without being paid by the county, but not being paid by the local. Is that what you're saying?
I believe there was also a provision in there that would allow for unpaid leave in accordance with the county's current leave policy.
So you're telling me that that the county's leave, I don't fall under the county's leave policy right now, so I don't know what you mean by that.
The
but,
county employees do.
The county employees. I get that's a separate negotiations and that's a
Are you not a
separate.
county employee?
Huh?
Are you not a county employee?
No, we're talking about two different labor agreements is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, we have a labor agreement for ECAT, we have a labor agreement for the county. So, but I don't fall under the leave process of the county. I don't have, when you refer to the leave process, what are you talking about? Are you talking about my vacation?
No, I'm talking about what's in that proposal. I believe there wasn't a provision that allowed for unpaid leave.
And how is it, for how much?
There's a policy that provides employees with unpaid leave under certain circumstances. There's no fixed amount.
Under circumstance, what are those circumstances?
Based on the need, man.
So, I need some clarification here to understand what you're saying. Are you saying,
If it's
so,
not in the contract, then they fall under the HR policy. That's what she's trying to say. If it's not in here, then you fall under the HR policy because you are a county employee. That's what she's trying to say.
well, the existing labor contract for ECAT has quite a bit of language regarding union time. Quite a bit of language. And so, we're kind of more comfortable with that language than we are what you've been proposing across the table. What you propose here sends the message that it's kind of restricting the access of representation to us. That's what it does. Well, you say no, but I'm going to tell you,
Especially.
all of you are being paid across this table to sit here and negotiate, and probably paid substantially pretty well compared to, the union side. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, the county taxpayers are paying for you to sit there and to work against us, but you're trying to tell us 120, that's 12 days.
Against
That will go so fast. 12 days will disappear like that.
Hey, Mike, just a
Well-
quick question for you. How many people do you represent?
How many do I represent?
Yeah, I mean, for ECAT.
For ECAT? You don't know that number?
I'm asking you, how many do you
approximately 100.
Okay. Have you spoken with any of your counterparts for similar size, similar situated unions in this county, and how much time they have in their pools?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just.
Oh, yeah,
just-
and they, you know,
just
I-
wondering if-
oh, yeah, I've talked to
Is
them.
it similar, or?
Well, see, he's trying to, I know where he's going with this, but
Trust
me.
It's just an innocent
trust me,
question.
trust me. They're paying attention to what's happening in our bargaining.
I'm sure they are.
They are. And,
Is it similar, or?
no, it's very, it depends. It depends on which one. I don't, I don't want to jump into their collective bargaining because I don't want to misquote. I'm on film, and I don't want to say something that's going to disrupt Nick from the firefighters or the paramedics. And I don't want to do that because, but I know I've talked to them several times. I will say that. And, I'm not going to judge how they how they represent their members. But, ATU we represent our people. That's what I'm going to say to you. We fight, and, we just picked up on 1771, it's been moved over to us, and we're, that's 230 people there. We're going to be, we're the type of union we represent to the best of our ability. And we want to make sure that the folks have their representation and their, so I'm not sure where you're going with that, what your intent
I was
was.
just wondering if you had an opportunity to speak with some of your counterparts.
Of
and see
course.
If your numbers are similar, or if there's a large disparity in the pool of hours that they have.
Well, I will tell you, they're all very disappointed in their pool hours. That part I do know I know that's extremely disappointed in their pool hours.
So you have a little bit more in yours, or a little bit less?
But we have much more. Yeah, much more. You know that. I mean, unless you're not paying attention to what's being put on the table, you're not, obviously, we have much more. And that's because we've negotiated that, and because we've been successful at negotiating that.
But to piggyback to what Ed said, as far as the other ATU contracts around the state, other transit systems.
Sure.
Is it consistent with what those transit systems have within their contracts?
With the other ATU labor contract,
Yeah.
yes, there is some that have this. Some have significant more than us. Yes,
And
yes.
some of them have less?
Some have less. But it's what you negotiate at the table. I don't know what you're trying to say here, because,
I'm
because the
just
question
asking
is,
the question.
the question that you're trying to say is,
No, I asked the question that I asked.
okay, well, Tanya, I want to, we're having this, so I want to feed into this, and this is important, is that what you're telling me is you guys work day in and day out in your jobs, and if there's an issue that's affecting the workforce, discipline, investigation, here, let me help you out. I'm going to give you an example. Now, obviously, the camera's on, so I'm going to enjoy this moment. So, in the labor contract, it talks about 5 days for you to take action, discipline on the employees within 5 days. And it has that extra little language that says extenuating circumstances. Okay? The intent of that, when it was negotiated, was that it was to say to management, to be able to say prior to that 5th day, if you needed extenuating circumstances to investigate that discipline, because it was serious enough, and you might have, let's say you had to reach out to other counsel, or like Mr. Matamore or somebody of that, you would let the union know, and the union would understand, hey, that's extenuating circumstances. The intent of that was not for you to be able to say, you know what, an action happened on the bus, even though we have a video, we just haven't looked at it in 5 days. That seems to be a problem, because you're just not getting around to it. So what I do know about the county is we have a recent action of an employee at ECAT, which I seem to find amazing. So it took you 3.5 weeks to put someone, to investigate a situation of an employee, and 3.5 weeks it took for you to investigate it when he was getting a 2-day suspension or whatever it was, a 2-day, 1 day, I think it was. And 3.5 weeks, you put him on administrative leave with pay. With pay. Which is, from the union perspective, thank you, okay? We're good with that. But here's the problem. 3.5 weeks. On the back of our buses, what does it say, Jim? Waste?
Fraud.
Fraud, or, what's the other word?
We're not going to talk about waste.
No, I am going to talk about it because you
there's a lot
started
of
this.
things- No, I didn't.
So let me,
I asked
to
the
me,
same
We're talking
to
about
me,
leave.
We're
I
getting
asked the
to me, that's waste.
field here.
Waste is you,
There's a lot of things that-
so what, the point that I'm making, when we're going back to going right back to what we're talking about, which is the union leave pool, is you all take all the time in the world to take your action on someone. All the time in the world. Got a county employee, it took you 55 days before you left them on administrative leave till you took an action on it. All the time in the world. But you're asking the union to not be able to take off a day to represent our members and to go and ask for a public records request, or to go and write a grievance, or to meet with a worker to find out what their issue is that they're claiming has been unjust to them?
Wouldn't say that at all.
Well, you're telling me I get 120 hours, that's 12 days.
And you can only use 10 hours a month.
And you can only use 10 hours a month. Thank you. You were assigned to look at that, weren't you? So that sends a totally different message. That tells us, to me, I'm just gonna be straight up with you. You're sending the message to the union, I'm gonna union bust you. Because I'm gonna make sure that you cannot conduct the business of representing your members.
That
You
be
might shake your head.
perception, But that's not, that has not been said from,
Nor
my
will
knowledge.
it ever be said.
Well, I'm sure, you know, we're on TV, so
Why
you're
why-
gonna be able to say
why
it.
don't
Well,
we
no one said
keep
that.
going through the list of,
Open items.
So, it's important to know that, you know,
why don't we go through the list of open items?
oh, we're gonna get there. So Tanya, I'm just gonna let you know that it's important for you to understand that, you know, you take your all time to take an action on someone, but you're telling the union we can't represent our members. We can't take the business and do what we have to do to represent our members on a daily basis.
I don't think that's what they
That's not what
meant,
I
but that's
said.
okay.
Your proposal says that.
I don't know about that.
Well, all right. So, union business. I have to flip through these. No, that was December, so I'm taking December differently than maybe you all are, but December, we reached some agreements with Amy. We thought it was under the process of negotiations, so we didn't really think that was open.
Right.
So,
Well, the question was, what do you think is open?
that's where we're working, well, I'm working through here.
Yeah.
So, I didn't specifically write them down, but I got them, trust me. So safety and training, let me double check that, was another one signed off on December. And just to be notable to this, you know, we reached language, I got her name right next to it, right? Regarding incident review board, and then changing it to do the process we were hoping
Hey,
for.
Mark, can you call out the article?
Article
Yes.
13.
Well, this is Article 13.
So are you
So-
saying you don't believe that's open, or you do? I'm getting
Yeah.
confused.
Well, that's December 17th, so we believe we negotiated that.
So
Okay,
I'm
so-
asking you for the items that you consider.
I hear you. I'm making comments as we go. I know that might be
Okay.
irritating, but I also want to mention Section 10, by the way. You
I
know,
have
we-
section, I have 10 down, you missed, you just missed it, that's okay.
What's that? Section
10,
10?
I got 10 down too.
Is-
Section 10 or Article 10?
Article 10.
Okay,
All right, we're good. What's next?
so. So can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
On Article 13, Section 10, regarding shields and buses,
Uh-huh.
do you think that's open? I'm just asking you all, do you think that's open?
What?
We,
Shields?
I'm sorry,
I
I'm
don't think we
scrolling back.
have any reference to shields in what we provided yesterday.
Okay.
What article is that?
I don't know what you mean by
13
necessarily
or-
whether it's open.
All right, I'm just, don't, go ahead.
Well, I'm no, I'll tell you what, Shields, you know, bus drivers across the country are assaulted every day. And so we really are trying to fight to get language in contracts that provides some safety for drivers. They're spit on, they're stabbed, they're punched, they're, at Tampa just, you know, in May,
Tragedy.
one of our bus drivers was murdered. And every other mode of transportation, whether it's airplanes, whether it's trains, taxi cabs even, right, there is a barrier. And we think that there should be something similar on buses, and that's something we're looking at and saying, you know,
Okay.
this is very important to us. You know, and we actually have federal legislation that we're working now on that.
Okay.
So it's a safety thing that we would like if, you know,
And across the state of Florida right now, they're putting shields in Tampa, in Jacksonville, in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
They already have them in Miami, West Palm Beach.
so,
Orlando's looking at them.
Okay, we understand.
yeah,
the
that's
request.
what the request is.
All right, so
Okay.
We also, under Article 20, we also believe that it was also negotiated for the committee, for the Employee Benefits Committee. I got Amy's name right here, and we think that that language was reached. I'm questioning whether you guys think it is or not, but we believe that that was worked out. Let me see what else. Sick leave is done.
Can I ask a question about benefit committee?
Yeah.
When you say something about benefit committee, do you want the ability to vote on the benefits, or, I mean, I don't understand what,
Well, the language is right there.
I don't have.
And I worked extensively with Amy to get to the language, and it just says to establish, and he has it right there, and so does she.
Okay.
Establish a benefits committee that shall work with the human resource and management and budget departments of the county in providing input to the county administrator and the board of county commissioners on matters relating. It's more of a recommending committee.
There currently is a benefits committee, it's just not a voting committee.
I've been on the committee.
I'm on the committee.
You're there too. And internally, they kind of vote on issues sometimes, yeah. But it's understood that it's a recommending committee.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We just want the language in our contract that will continue, because the reason we're saying that is it had been established years ago, and then it kind of disappeared, even though it's a county, it was created as a county policy, I think. I think I got a copy of an actual policy where you guys created a benefits committee. I have it in my bag. And in the end, though, they dropped off and they just didn't do it for several years. And then I started screaming about it, and then it came back up, so.
It's been back up since before y'all, 'cause I remember we've been doing it
I
for about 4 years.
got put on the committee about the first year I
Yes.
came on board, which was 2013.
Okay. But it wasn't every year, though. You had several years where it didn't even take an action, because I did a public records request, and they couldn't provide me anything that was actually done with the committee for 2 or 3 years, just prior to 2018.
Okay, we got Article
Okay.
20. What's next?
All right, so let me continue.
I would like to, as a payroll person, and just throwing something out there, not saying I want to change the policy of any sort, I wish that your contract would have all your leave in one area, instead of us having to go look at Article 21 for sick leave for bus drivers, and then Article whatever for trolley. If we could have it all in one group, it'd be easier for us to read it, too. That's just me being payroll and asking a lot, sorry.
And it could be
Okay.
structured when you put the actual agreement together. I'm not so worried about that. All right, so let me check something here.
Just so you know, we asked what items the union considered open. And they provided us with a very large document.
Okay. Thank you.
So under assignment of runs, Article 31, which is one of the articles you put out here.
Yes.
We did agree on April 25th to a Section 7, and we believe that because, that actually doesn't have a TA on it with signatures, that's one of the things that's open, and it's kind of operational language that basically just ensures that every week that the people that are on the extra board of assignments that can do vacation hold downs, people that are out, it's just operational stuff that was agreed to, and we don't think it's a big deal, but we would consider that probably open.
Okay.
Okay? Let's see here. So Article 35, which is, I believe, wages. So we would agree that on April 24th, we had some significant discussions on that date regarding a 3% across-the-board raise that day. And along with that, we also discussed having a continuing committee that would just be a recommendation committee, kind of like the benefit committee for healthcare. That would be a recommendation committee that would work on constantly looking at classifications, which could be a county committee, and of course, in this agreement, we would be concerned about, obviously, transit classifications.
And bringing people up to a living.
Bringing people up to a living wage, yes. And, I mean, at ECAT, we'll just be straight up with you, which is, the biggest concern for us is customer service employees. We think that wage is not really at the standard it should be at for wages, and a little concerned about bus cleaners as well. So those are the two positions that we're worried about there. But we would understand that if that's part of what you wanted to discuss, we would be open to, obviously, to discussing that. Moving on. Let me look here. Mechanic stuff. I got your signature. No, I got Matamore's signature on everything. Mr. Matamore signed that one too. Let me look here. I think maintenance is done, right?
Yeah.
Maintenance is done? Yep, it is. Okay, we have signatures. Just FYI, we agreed to also, if you want to know, we agreed to, we had a proposal on the table that we took off in December regarding the transit maintenance technicians and the mass transit maintenance worker, as far as a proposal that was put on the table that they originally wanted, but we had withdrawn that to move on.
Okay.
We also believe that trolley operators,
Where are you at now? 41.
41, trolley operators is one that, while it was discussed in March 8th, potentially you could consider that open as well, but we think it's done. This is, to us, it's a no-brainer. The agreement on both sides is that we're all going to become one classification, which is operators. And we already had a plan in place to move them over and fit them into the seniority list. And based on their seniority, they would bid on service. And then there was an agreement that they would be brought up to the standards of pay and benefits as a full-time employee.
After they went through some degree of training to bring them up to speed on the buses.
Correct. And that was operational needs that was expressed by Mr. Cretenton when he was transit director. He thought it was a smart move to do, and we agree. So there was some language added there.
Okay, we talked about retirement today.
At retirement, you kind of know where we're at with that, which we think that the positions, you threw out that you would like, that the, what is it called? I think it's section 3? Section 3, which you put across the table. I think we would agree with that, wouldn't we?
Oh,
Section 3, which is the healthcare assistance program?
Yeah, section 3 and section 5.
Right.
Section 3, we think that we would agree to that. And we would also.
Article 42.
And even though in our, huh?
Article 42, that section on healthcare.
Healthcare, section 3, what they gave us, we would agree to. We think that's appropriate. And now, because that article is, somewhat open, section 4, we actually had a TA on it with Amy Lavoie in December. So I'm not sure if we're comfortable yet with what you put across the table. We see it. We're not thinking it's a bad thing, but we also think that we have a TA, so I'm not so sure we're ready to move off that. Section 6 is what we think is still open, obviously, with the buyout, Mike.
Duration is,
We believe the duration hasn't been finalized, correct? We agree with that, Mike?
we talked about miscellaneous, which doesn't have a number.
Oh, and I'm sorry about Article 35. It's also open as the idea of the second and third year for wages. You know, there was discussion of a reopener, there was discussion of should it be presented a different way. So we would say that that's probably still open, okay? I forgot about that. Duration, you just mentioned, but I think that everybody was looking at a 3-year contract, and we were kind of going backwards in time as well. There was also some activity regarding cell phone activity, and I'll just be honest with you, on March 8th, we agreed to it. I mean, we agree that the state law has been, you know, active about how to handle a cell phone, and that, so we added the language that's in your booklet there that will talk about what should be done when there is, driver has to get out of the seat, where before they didn't. The bus operator has to get out of the seat, correct? And get away from the seat before they could ever touch a cell phone while they're on a layover, right? And we're not opposed to that, and obviously, we agreed to it in March. And we're wanting to follow the state law.
Okay.
So the only thing that's left, I think. Now, I know that 53 might be in question by Kristen. I'm not sure, but it's December. Amy LaVoy signed off on it. Kind of reduced the language, but that's, doesn't play much role anymore, I think.
What is 53?
Transit Authority, so we're not so sure that, you know, where that will go. We think that might have to be rediscussed because of the actions of the board, and that might have to be revisited because of their actions. And then finally, I think the only other thing that I can see, and I'm not saying that I didn't miss something, I won't, because I went through this quickly.
I know.
Is the miscellaneous Article 56, which, you know, we, again, even though it was discussed in December, it wasn't agreed to until April 25th, when we sat across verbally. It was regarding light duty, regarding adding the policy manuals from ECAT at the end of the contract, the drug and alcohol policy, adding all that to the end of the contract as for viewing purposes only. And let me see if there's one other thing here. Let me just double check. Nope, I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it. So I don't see anything else, and I just want to be on the record that I might have missed one thing. So I don't, you know, I'm not going to say I didn't, this is it. Because there could be a couple other items that are out there that I didn't talk about.
Okay. Could we have a 5-minute caucus?
Sure, sure.
Literally 5 minutes.
Literally, okay. Hopefully you'll give us a date.
That was days.
Days, Ms. Gilly.
Said two.
Yeah.